Welcome to Saying Yes Again,
a podcast about second chances, real love, and opening your heart after heartbreak.
We're your hosts, Dr. Lisa
and Tony,
a midlife couple who found love after divorce. And now we're here to share our story.
And to remind you that it's never too late to say yes again.
So put on your headphones and listen closely, because your next yes could be the one that changes everything. Non-negotiables.
Yes.
So non-negotiables can make or break a relationship. Those long lists, unrealistic expectations, being rigid, all of that can really stall your dating journey. So whether you're single and dating, whether you're in a relationship, or just curious about how couples find compatible partners, then this episode is for you.
Exactly. Stay tuned.
So we're back with another episode, and I am just really feeling grateful for this podcast and this journey that we're on. How about you?
I'm feeling extremely excited about it too. I think it's so important and this is like a critical thing in relationships, marriages, or whatever. You know?
It's really important for us, I think, to talk about it, to tell our story, and not that our story is perfect, but to share with other people, our journey in terms of finding love again after divorce. And hopefully this is, becoming something that people can gravitate towards and inspire them to really think about that second love again.
Yes, definitely. So non-negotiables is what we're going to be talking about today.
Yes.
And kind of the way I look at it, babe, it's kind of like standards or rules for potential relationships. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah. So non-negotiables definitely are those standards that you set when you're looking for that someone, right? When you're looking for that mate. So what are kind of like the must-haves? What are the things that are like at the top of your list that you must have in a mate? So those become, right, like your non-negotiables.
It's almost like a screening process, right? We might want to be a little flexible on them, but it allows you to kind of filter out, those people that you really don't want in your circle to a certain degree.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. Absolutely. So, what do you think about having specific criteria for a potential partner? Do you think that it's being a little bit too picky? Do you think it's over the top? Like, what are your thoughts about that?
I used to absolutely hate it. Oh my God. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? I mean, you asked me that, didn't you, babe?
I did. Early on in our relationship, I asked that question. Sisters want to know.
I believe we were going around Stone Mountain trying to get a little exercise in. We basically had just met one another. And then she hit me right between the eyes with a non-negotiable.
Where do you see yourself in 5 years? I think that is...
Hopefully I'm alive.
It's a broad question. And, it's one of those questions that you're not trying to be, too much in the person's, details or personal space.
Kool-Aid.
But it just gives you an idea of sort of, where the person is. So, yeah, I asked that question.
I mean, I've come to accept it. I look upon it totally different now. And I obviously used it, used it in the past. Actually, when I met you, I had my criteria.
Yeah, I think we all have our criteria,
yes.
Right?
You got to have criteria, right, brothers?
So when we're talking about the criteria, though, just for the audience who, is watching us and listening. So we're not talking about like that laundry list, right? Because, women, sometimes we can have that laundry list of things that we want from a potential mate. They have to have this, they have to have that, they have to look a certain way, they have to have a certain career, a job, they have to have, whatever, like all the things, right? So it becomes this long laundry list of items that we are expecting.
So are you saying, babe, that we still have to be realistic and remain flexible?
Absolutely. Because, you sometimes can weed out the gems, or you can weed out someone that may be your perfect partner. There is no perfect relationship, but you may weed out that person that you are very compatible with because you have this laundry list of items that you're kind of, checking the boxes.
Yeah. I mean, because I used to have these apprehensions about dating physicians. You know what I mean? I didn't want to feel
I
like I
can't
was in
even
a
believe you
doctor's
said
office or
that.
something. And I'm so glad that I was flexible as far as my list was concerned. Because now I'm with my babe, right?
Oh
You
my
didn't know
gosh,
that.
I did not know
You didn't
that.
know that,
And
but I
had I
did.
known that, maybe I would not have. No, I'm just kidding.
Come on now. Let's not go there. Come on, let's dive in, babe. These
Okay.
people want to hear this information, I'm
So we're
sure.
talking about like the character traits of a person. We're talking about their values. And again, it isn't about finding that perfect someone, but it's about finding that person whose imperfections you can live with, right?
Exactly. Exactly. Nobody's going to be perfect.
Yeah. So, I mean, like you said, I had a list and, you obviously had criteria as well. And we wanted to just sort of talk about this today so that we give you guys just some framework or a framework for you to
Definitely.
think about when you're looking for, that next special someone in your life.
Yeah. Yeah. That brings me to the point, babe. Russell Wilson, NFL quarterback. Everybody knows him, married to Sierra. He spoke recently on a podcast and he too admitted to the fact that he had non negotiable.
Yes, yes. And it's really was inspiration, I think, for this podcast segment that we're doing because we
Definitely.
definitely went through that as well. As you mentioned, early on in our dating life, how I had my criteria. So
Uh,
yeah, so tell us about Russell Wilson.
well, a few of the criteria or non negotiables that he had were faith, faithfulness, independence, and the ability to command the attention of a room, which Sierra obviously does.
Yeah, yeah. So I think, during that podcast interview, he was talking about, after his divorce, because he obviously, was
Yes.
married, previously as well. And with him being in the public eye, obviously, that was, sure, very hard for him to go through, as well as, for his ex-wife as well. But he talked about the next time that he got into a relationship, right, that he had these criteria or these
Mm-hmm.
non-negotiables that he was looking for in a person just to make sure that they were, both, I guess, kind of equally yoked.
Compatible,
Exactly.
same footing.
Exactly. So those 5 things that he had, obviously he found in Sierra. So I think when he talked about like what was the first one that you said?
Faith.
Yeah, faith. He mentioned that he wanted someone who was grounded obviously in their faith and had a spiritual background, and we can see that, right? Because Russell
Definitely.
really
Definitely.
relies on his faith a lot through all the challenges that he's been through. He's very vocal about that,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
we know that that's an important trait for him.
He also, babe, spoke about faithfulness.
Yeah, definitely. And I think when he mentioned faithfulness, again in this podcast, he was talking about how he wanted that person to be faithful to everything that they touch. So whether it was the relationship, whether it was their career,
Oh, wow. That's
whether it was the
amazing.
goals, just that they had a faithfulness about, what they were going after. So that was really important for him.
Yeah, another one of those non-negotiables that he talked about, and I think I might, you know, talk to this piece here is independence.
Mm,
You know, he wanted her to be independent of him, and he be independent of her. If each one of them able to operate without the other, so that when they join forces, they're able to exponentially complement one another, kind of like
yeah.
we do here.
Yeah.
I mean, she handles her business, I handle my business. So when we join forces, we're a force to reckon with or to deal with.
Exactly.
You know,
Exactly. Yeah. And I think, for some people that's important. Again, that was one of his. I may not be for everyone, but that
correct,
definitely was one
correct,
of his. He wanted the woman in his life to be independent, which I think is, which is a good trait to have.
correct,
Yeah.
correct. Now, I think the other one, it reminds me of you. When she walks into a room, she just commands the attention. And I love that she just be glowing. The first date we had, she walked in that room, the whole restaurant lit up. So, but anyway,
Oh, thank you, honey.
yeah, the whole restaurant lit up. But anyway,
Yeah, yeah. So for him, that again, that was important. And when
yeah.
I look at him, though, I think it's important for him because Russell Wilson can command a room all by himself, right? So think about it: to have a partner, to have someone where when you both walk into a room, you both command, right, the room. You both have that presence and that influence.
Oh, yes.
So I
Oh,
think for
yes.
him, that was really important. He didn't want all the shine, right?
Fireworks. Well, he's not gonna get it. Married to Sierra.
Right.
Woo!
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
But you also had some non-negotiables, babe. You know?
Yeah, yeah. I definitely had some non-negotiables, and I think we talked
Mhm.
about that, a little bit later, in our day in our dating life, but, I started off with the basic question, where do you see yourself in
Fundamentals.
5 years?
Right.
But I did have some criteria as well.
Did I meet your criteria, baby?
You met my criteria.
Did I? A
Yeah, you
little
did.
bit?
You
Were
did.
you flexible?
I was flexible,
Okay,
you
I
know?
appreciate that.
Yeah, I was. I was flexible. But the
Okay.
top 5, I think, really, were important to me.
What were
So,
your top 5? Y'all listen closely here. What were your top 5
yeah. So,
non-negotiables?
my non negotiable. So, the first non negotiable for me was I needed my partner to be vulnerable or to have some vulnerability, right?
Oh, wow. You wanted me to be sensitive? Is that what you're saying?
I think for a man, it's probably hard to kind of tap into that sometimes. And you guys may look at it as a sensitive side, but I think for women, we want to be able to have that connection, right? We want to be able to have conversations where you actually share your feelings, where you don't
So,
hold things in and bottle things up so we can actually have, a conversation.
not sensitive, but open.
Open.
Have a certain openness to us or about
Yeah,
us. Okay.
absolutely. Share your feelings, what's going on,
I think I've told you more than enough. I was
Oh, that
wide.
became
I was
that became
wide.
apparent very early
I was
on,
wide
wide
open
open,
from inception. You know,
wide open. So that definitely,
I figure that's the best way to be.
yeah. And
You
I
know,
appreciate that.
no confusion,
No confusion.
right? So, what's your second non-negotiable, babe?
So, my second non-negotiable is to be spiritually grounded.
Okay,
So for me, having faith in God, and again, I think it was one of those things where I was flexible in the sense that, I wasn't expecting that we were going to, go to church every week or that we were going to, you know, um, do it even more than that. But I wanted to make sure that we shared the same spirituality because that was important to me. Prayer was
okay,
important, going to church was important, being part of a church community
definitely,
was important.
definitely.
So, and my faith, just like Russell Wilson, my faith has carried me through some things.
Me too.
So, I really needed that to be important in my relationship.
I mean, being born and raised in my hometown of Erie, Pennsylvania, my mom, she really instilled in me the importance of having a spiritual relationship.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
used to go to church with my grandfather religiously.
Mhm.
So the one thing I adore about you though, babe, and this is what we're kind of speaking about, is she made sure that I was spiritually spiritually grounded. She didn't force feed it. She didn't beat me upside the head with a Bible, and I'm not trying to minimize the importance of spirituality, but she was flexible and she
Mhm.
did let me know. And she found out that, I go to church too. Brothers go to church,
Yeah.
right? Let's go to church.
Yeah.
Let's hold hands. And sometimes that will that will carry you guys through those a lot of times rather carry you guys through those bad or trying times that you may experience or endure in your relationship or marriage, right?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. The old saying is a family that prays together stays
Stays
together.
together
So, yeah, so it's very important. And then we actually found out that we belong to the same
to the
church.
same church. Can you believe it? Can you believe
So
it?
again, the stars were aligned.
They were aligned. I couldn't believe that one.
I
But
know.
listen, what's the next? What's another one?
So my third non-negotiable or criteria was I wanted my partner to be fit,
Financially fit.
financially fit. And to me it didn't mean that they had to have $1,000,000, they had to be like super rich or drive an expensive car or
Okay,
or own a
okay,
whole bunch of homes. When
okay.
I'm saying financially fit, I mean financially responsible, right? So, do you have a career, right? Is it have you been with that job or career for a long period of time,
All right.
Shows a commitment, it shows motivation.
Mhm.
It shows responsibility. So, do you have plans for retirement, right? Do you have, an emergency fund? I mean,
Wow, an
all of those
emergency
things
fund. It's a lot. It's a lot.
all those things are important though.
But let me jump in right here. I mean that's very important. It's important from the man's perspective as well. But a lot of times, what men hear is they feel like you're sizing them up.
Mm,
You know, um, I didn't feel that way. Because of the delivery. Delivery is everything, right? You can deliver things a certain way and they'll be taken or misconstrued, right? But she didn't deliver that financial piece or the non-negotiables as callous as what I've experienced in the past. So I appreciate that.
yeah, absolutely. And I think again, it's a conversation that you have. You don't want to make anyone feel bad or you don't want to,
No,
put someone
no,
in a bad space having the conversation. But if it's important to you, you have the discussion as to why it's important. And I
right.
think that, being financially fit is really important for a relationship because we know that finances sometimes can kill a relationship.
Ooh, and how? And how?
Yeah. So I've had to kind of, make sure that that was, part of the conversation. So I
Yes,
appreciate you being open about that.
no problem. What's your next nut? Do you have any more?
Yeah, I have two more. So one was also being physically active, right?
Physically active.
Physically active, physically fit.
Oh, okay.
And, I am a person who I'm a physician, obviously, so obviously health is important, right? So I want to make sure that my partner understood the importance of staying healthy. So going to the doctor, getting your regular checkups, eating healthy. I'd like for us to exercise together, right? And again, we don't exercise 7 days a week, but
No,
certainly we make a concerted effort to make sure that we get some physical activity in.
we worked out today,
We sure did. I'm
right?
tired.
I went for a brisk walk, about 2.5, 3 miles, and an exercise downstairs. And she also exercised.
Yeah.
We want to look good for each other, right?
Yeah.
I can
Yeah.
see your muscles, baby.
Oh.
Hmm?
And we want to be around too. We have a
Yes,
lot to look forward to. So we want to be here for each other and for our family.
exactly.
So it's really important that physically active, piece was really important for me.
And just a footnote here. Remember, when you're thinking about your non negotiables, the other person has non negotiables as well. And you may not fall in line with all of his or hers non negotiables, but they're willing to be flexible. So the flexibility is what allowed Lisa and I to be together for 4 years. We're celebrating an
Yeah.
anniversary this weekend, 6/29. Be 1 year of marriage, and we've been together for, yeah, 4 years.
4 years.
4 years. So flexibility has brought us a long way.
Yeah.
So don't be in love with these non negotiables and unrealistic
And I'm realistic
because
about
you
them.
will be home alone talking to
Absolutely.
yourself. And that's for real. But go ahead, babe. You any more?
Yeah, and my last one, and one of my most important, I think this was at the top of my list actually of criteria, was I really wanted my partner to understand the importance of quality time, spending quality time together.
You mean
Because
watching TV together?
I mean, just doing things together, right?
Okay.
So, I mean, I like when we date. I like when we go out,
I played the card games with you. You had me playing those truth or dare card games when we first met. That's another thing they like to do, right?
That was fun though.
It was fun.
It was
Okay.
fun.
You make a real good detective, I tell you that. How would you deal with this financial crisis?
That's not the question I asked. But anyway, so quality time is important because, yeah, I really wanted for us to be able to spend time together, time that's uninterrupted because, we both have busy lives, right? So quality time, spending quality time, fellas and women, means that you spend time together uninterrupted,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That you take the time to really think about things that you wanna do together, and a lot of times for us, we don't have to go anywhere. We can just stay home, watch a good movie. Oh,
Have
a
a
good movie
ball.
is everything.
Chocolate chip cookies and a good movie
And a
go a
good
long
movie.
way. But I tell you one thing about the quality time, babe, is that whenever we're working out, we go walking or whatever we do, that's quality
It
time.
is, it is.
Or, we've gone to the winery, something I was hesitant about doing. I found it to be an absolutely awesome time. And one last thing that stands out profoundly in my mind is traveling. Our last trip was to
Mm,
Aruba.
yeah. Yeah, that was
We ended up at a
beautiful. Oh
disco
my
club.
gosh.
Can you imagine that? And it was amazing. Everything was in Spanish.
Yes.
No comprende usted. But we had an awesome time. So
We
that
did, we did.
that just adds that glue to your relationship, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. The minutes that you spend together, the moments that you create, right? Those magical
Yeah.
moments that we talk about is just
Yeah.
really
The
important.
memories. The
Mhm. It's
memories.
really important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't
So, yeah, so I didn't really have, like a long laundry list or a long
Yes, she did.
checklist. I just had the 5 criteria, right? And I think it's important for us to understand that when we have those criteria, like we don't go into a relationship or on a date and just start like checking a box and asking the
No.
questions.
Unrealistic.
It's unrealistic. So you have those 5 criteria maybe in your head, kind of packed somewhere,
Yeah.
and you're just paying attention as you're kind of going along in your dating journey. These things will come up and unveil themselves without you even having to ask the question
Yeah.
a lot of times,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Hey, how about I get to do I have an opportunity to talk about my criteria?
What's your criteria,
Men
honey?
have criteria too,
What's your
right?
criteria?
Is this going to just be about your criteria?
Yeah, let's hear yours.
Y'all ready for my criteria? Number 1, I look for like a person that's attractive on the inside and the outside,
Mm,
right? External beauty is not the only thing, but it's very intriguing. But the internal beauty is even more intriguing, right? So that's just one of mine, right? And independence, we talked about the independence. I think
mhm,
it's more powerful, right? As long as we're both independent from the other, and then we collaborate, and it's even more meaningful. It goes a lot further.
mhm.
You know, I like an intelligent woman. Oh my God, whew, that just does something for me, right? Able to have a conversation. I like to talk about politics. I like to talk about current events. And I even like to talk about things going on in the hood or whatever. I'm all over the place. And so a nice conversation can go a long way, right? She don't know I'm gonna say this, but I'm gonna say it
Oh
anyways.
gosh.
I read a
Let
poem
me hold
some
my seat.
hold on, hold on. I read a poem some time ago that sums this up. And the name of the poem, you want to know what the name of the poem was, baby?
Oh, what's the name of the poem,
Huh?
honey?
I'm about to shock you. You want to know what the name of the poem
What's
is?
the
And
name
I
of the
think you
poem?
guys can relate. It was
Mhm.
called Can You Make Love to My Mind?
Ooh.
Yes.
Mm.
Right. Let that resonate.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, did I satisfy that part?
You did a phenomenal job and some, right? But moving right along, I also like a lady who's physically fit,
Mm.
right?
Okay.
Physically fit, intelligent, look good on the inside and the outside, independent. Just to name a name a few, you
Okay.
know? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Soul
I don't know
sister.
that I don't know that I knew all those criteria
You
that
weren't
you
supposed
had.
to know. You weren't supposed to know. That was me, right? You weren't supposed to know that, baby. The
Okay.
only way you might have been able to become somewhat familiar with my non-negotiables
Uh-huh.
is when we read our vows.
Oh,
right?
okay.
Remember I talked about diamond in the rough?
Yeah. Yeah,
Hmm.
you did. Okay.
Yeah.
Mm.
But let's not get off track. We got to remain
So
engaged.
so we talked about the criteria, we shared the story of, Russell Wilson again, which was sort of the
Yes.
inspiration for this
Oh man.
podcast, but it reminded us really about, that same process that we had went through as well.
Yes.
So I
Yes.
think that was the good for us to talk about and to share with you. So hopefully you've garnered some, great wisdom and some great information from what we shared with you about the power of having these non-negotiables or having these criteria.
And also, please, everybody that I mean, a lot of us have non-negotiables out there. Our presentation or our podcast is not in any way trying to get you to trivialize or minimize or to change what you deem to be important by way of your non-negotiables. The only
Mhm.
thing Lisa and I think we're both trying to explain or express is being flexible, being realistic are the reasons why we were able to come together
Yeah,
and we were able to
absolutely.
join forces and celebrating our 1 year anniversary coming up this Sunday. I was
Yeah.
extremely lonely after divorce, kind of lost, etc. So I had the non-negotiables. I implement them, and I prayed as well. Remember, we talked about the
Yeah,
spirituality.
spirituality is very important.
I
Absolutely.
I was in my house warfare, and I told the
Mm.
Heavenly Father I wanted somebody beautiful on the inside and the outside.
Mm.
Right?
Wow.
Can you stand up for the podcast people? No, I'm just joking. I'm just joking. I'm just joking.
Stand up
I'm
for the
just joking.
podcast people. You know what?
Our podcast community. I'm sorry.
Yes.
But is there anything else we want to cover, babe?
No, I mean, I think, we can sort of just wrap up with, maybe recapping some advice that we want to leave with our audience. And
Yeah.
one
Yeah.
is to just be clear about what those, non-negotiables are, and
Yes.
also be honest about
Mm-hmm.
what those non-negotiables are.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think sometimes, we may have the non-negotiables and then we may say, oh, well, you know what? That's really not important. I'm going to push that one to the side. And what you don't want to do is get rid of a non negotiable that's really, really important to you. And then you get into a relationship and then that non negotiable is not there. And then you're feeling some kind of way about it.
Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
be honest. Be honest about what those things are.
Yes. Yes. I mean, I totally agree. You have to have some structure as far as the dating life is concerned. I saw recently somebody that I know they put their non-negotiables on Facebook. Obviously, I won't mention any names, but I think that might be a little too much,
Hmm.
right? Because people tend to get offended to that. It's just like keep it to yourself, like we did. Have your non-negotiables, communicate with people, go on dates, whatever, have fun. If they don't satisfy what you are comfortable with, or they don't meet the criteria to a certain extent, even with the flexibility factor, then you
Hmm.
just continue to date. But you don't need to write it on anybody's headboard. That's just a little bit too much, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and I think it's important too to understand, from your previous relationships, what worked and what didn't work. And that can
Good point.
actually help you to develop your list of non-negotiables,
Good
right?
point.
So what worked and what didn't work. And again, I think that's important to kind of just, go through in your mind.
Yes, yes.
Mhm.
Well, are we ready to wrap up, babe? Or
Yeah, so just continue to, work on yourself as well, because even if you have all those non-negotiables, you want to make sure that you're exemplifying those as well, right? You can't ask your partner to be
yes.
physically active if you're not going to be physically active.
Yes.
So work on
Yes.
yourself. And like Tony said, just stay flexible through the process when you're looking for those character traits and also those values that you want to see in your potential partner.
Yes. And as always, we agree. I really appreciate you guys for subscribing and downloading our podcast. We've seen enormous growth in a short period of time. We welcome you to tell your friends or family members about the Say It Yes Again community. And it's saying yes again, Dr. Lisa and Tony
Mhm.
on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeart, YouTube, TikTok, and we recently started a saying yes again Facebook page as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can also join us over there. So we'd really love to hear from you, So what are your non-negotiables? You can
Yes.
comment on this podcast. You can send us a message. You can just communicate with us on Facebook or on YouTube. Let us know, what are your non-negotiables, or what did you take away from this podcast episode?
Yes, yes. We really appreciate it.
Yes, and we hope to see you again really soon. So don't forget to follow us, as Tony said, on all social media. And we look forward to seeing you again in our next podcast episode.
Yes. Have a good one. Thanks again for tuning in.